On today's episode, we take a look back at the weekend loss in Boston and look forward towards our next game in Carolina. All that more, but first, let's play that music.
You're Locked On Lightning, your daily podcast on the Tampa Bay Lightning. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another episode of Locked On Lightning, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Adam Danker. I want to thank you all for making us your first listen of the day. Today, we're talking about that loss in Boston, and I feel like we talk about this way too much or say this way too often here on Locked On Lightning. Whenever the Lightning lose pretty much lose. We always say these things about, well, they should have won that game, or this is a game they could have won, or this was a very winnable game, and that couldn't be more true in this game against the Boston Bruins. And I know we were all sweating coming into this game, as we all know the Lightning have had a tough go of it, pretty much for this entire month of March, dating really all the way back to February, and I have to say off the bat, this was a surprise performance for me to see the Lightning play this way, given just how horrific they played on Thursday against the Ottawa Senators. And so it was a pleasant surprise. And not to say that this game didn't have its disappointments, or it didn't look like early on that it was going to go or swing towards the kind of game that we saw against Ottawa. Really off the initial goal, puck deflects off of Hedman to give the Bruins a 1-0 lead early on, and goal credit goes to Patrice Bergeron. And really this goal, like if you've missed pretty much all the prior games, and this is your first experience with this year's Lightning, and you're hearing, well, Victor Hedman has been struggling this year. If you want to see a prime example of what his struggles have really been this entire season, look no further to, past this goal. I mean, he has body on Patrice in front, and he's clearly getting out-muscled in front, which maybe by a bigger player I could see, but Bergeron on Hedman, and don't get me wrong, Patrice Bergeron is one of the best centers of this generation, but this is a matchup. Victor Hedman, really, in theory, when he's at the top of his game defensively, and just, I think it's also a mindset thing, to be honest, at this point in the season. But when you look at what kind of season he's had, to a certain extent, this goal and the way it was scored, it doesn't really come as a surprise. And because, Hedman's struggles aside, the Lightning have not had a very good presence in front of Vasilevsky this season. And as we all know, not very good early on in games. And really, this was the epitome of that. This is really a prime example of that. And I feel like, the Lightning, I mean, it's a double-edged sword with this situation with Boston scoring first, because if Boston doesn't score first, if they stay scoreless, I don't think we see that push from Tampa, especially the one that led to the shorthanded goal from Hedman, which, yeah, it's a good way to look about it, especially for Hedman, and especially this situation, this game. And it does say something about this team in this game that, like I said, a game that was very winnable. I thought for the most part, the Lightning played well. other than their special teams, which we have spoken quite a bit about this year, where I have said, and I'll stick by it, that don't let the stats fool you about where the Lightning rank in power play success, because they go through stretches where they're 1 for 2, 1 for 3, 1 for 2, and they're consistent. And then they have performances like this where they're 0 for 5, 0 for 4. And, it's not the 1 for 2, the 1 for 3 games that are going to be deciding factor. In my opinion, it's the 0 for 5 games. And that's what separates, or that's what really is the breaking point for the Lightning when we're talking about a win and a loss. All things aside, I thought this was a very good step in the right direction, given that Boston was, or is, very much still the best team in the league. Def, I mean, I think mathematically it's impossible for them to be caught at this point, points wise. So President's Trophy winners or future President's Trophy winners. But yeah, just a disappointing loss nonetheless. I always feel though like the Lightning play well in Boston. Don't know why. Don't know why. It's just maybe the environment, maybe just Boston being such a very hostile place. Uh, Maybe that coupled with these two teams having somewhat of a rivalry, a more intense rivalry uh, in the last couple of years. But yeah, I think that this was a game that the Lightning should have won. Um, you look at, like I said, the special teams. That's the ultimate deciding factor in this one. The Lightning could execute a couple of times. I mean, we're talking about a 4-2, maybe a 3-2 game for the Tampa Bay Lightning as opposed to a 2-1 loss. I thought this was a game where, when we always talk about this, when the Lightning lose a game, or when we're talking about the Lightning, what they need to do to win a game, we always talk about Andre Vasilevsky, and I thought Vazzy played well in this one. Made some pretty good saves to keep them in the game. Stopped 32 of 34 shots, so you can't really fault him in this one. When it comes down, and Cooper said it, perfectly after the game or the day after. I'm not entirely sure when he said it. I just remember seeing the quote saying, usually when you hold a team to 2 goals or less, you have a very good chance of winning a hockey game. And that's 100% right. I think, especially with this team, anytime they give up 2 or less goals, I think they are really in a prime position to win. So, that I think that also adds to the disappointment. Um, Loss aside, I think that though you have to look at this game as like I said, a very good step in the right direction, given just the nature of how badly they lost against Ottawa. Um, and yeah, I would hope that we see a similar performance in tomorrow's game against the Carolina Hurricanes, because I think that they're still a very good hockey team. They have a lot of weapons on their team. I still think that at the end of the day, I think that really, as talented as Carolina Hurricanes are, as talented as the Boston Bruins are, as talented as a lot of the teams that we will see coming up in the next couple of weeks that the Lightning will have to face before they start the NHL playoffs, it's going to be the Lightning who will be their own worst enemy if they lose games. It won't be the other teams that beat them. It'll be the Lightning. And, it might sound like a cliche, but I would love to hear some disagreements in the comments below. Let me know. But yeah, I think the Lightning in this game, as well as they played, they beat themselves, I think, by not executing. So, we'll see, hopefully, as we always say, going into upcoming matchups, if they could improve upon this, carry over the momentum that they did gather in this game. Like I said, it's a loss, but it's a loss that nonetheless that I think you could look back on with some sort of positivity that you could bring into upcoming games. So we'll talk about that in our upcoming segment in just a little bit. But first, I want to talk about one of today's sponsors, and that's our friends over at Athletic Greens. Now, if you haven't heard of Athletic Greens already, let me tell you a little bit about what makes them one of the best nutritional shakes out there on the market. It's lifestyle friendly, whether you eat keto, paleo, vegan, dairy free, or gluten free. Price, I mean, you can't match this. It costs less than $3 a day. You're investing in your health, and it's cheaper than your cold brew habit. And it also has, it's real. People out there, they swear by it. I swear by it. It has over 7,000 five-star reviews, recommended by professional athletes, trusted by leading health experts. So right now it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. It's just one scoop in a cup of water every day. It's that easy. That's it. No need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health. To make it easy right now, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1 year supply of immune supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is go and visit athleticgreens.com/NHL Network. Again, that is athleticgreens.com/NHL Network to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. So, as always, I want to thank everybody for making us your first listen of the day. And if you haven't already done so, please go ahead and subscribe to the pod. Give us a follow wherever podcasts are distributed in audio form. We are available on iTunes, Apple. I guess that's the same thing. Spotify, Google Play, wherever podcasts are distributed. Like I said, we're there. And we're also available on YouTube. So go over to our YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button, drop a comment below. Are we feeling better? Are we feeling worse? Little bit of just the same between Ottawa and Boston. How optimistic, if any optimism exists with some of you still, with the recent struggle that our Lightning have had? Are we feeling better about Carolina? Because I've always said over the past year or so, at least this season, that I really think that Carolina is one of the more dangerous teams in the league. I just don't think they get talked about as much and I think this is what really sets them apart from other teams is that they don't have, they don't really have a big name player that's going to go out and beat you on any given night. Yeah, the names are there. Sebastian Aho, Seth Jarvis, Andre Kasha, Jesper Kontakanemi, butchered that. Martin Nicias, who I think is probably the most, I think it's really, Martin Nicias is probably one of the better players on this team that nobody really talks about as much as they probably should. Teravainen, Svechnikov. The list goes on of players on this team that could hurt you. And really, that's why I think the Carolina Hurricanes fly underneath the radar as much as they do. And that's why I think this is a tougher matchup for the Lightning as they attempt to go into Carolina tomorrow and win. Actually, I'm sorry, they're at home, but oh, they're in Carolina. I'm sorry. I'm getting my matchups crisscrossed. But yeah, I mean, Carolina is like I said, they're a team that just has so many weapons, and it doesn't take one player that you have to look out for to hurt you. As with a Edmonton, with a Connor McDavid or a Leasson Draisaitl. With Carolina, it's everybody. And with the Lightning's just recent struggles, it's going to be tough to see if the Lightning could go out there and win tomorrow night on the road. But I think that, in my opinion, with the way this team played with Boston over the weekend, and Boston's another team in that regard that has so many pieces that could beat you, that I think that was a good game to lose, because it also, as positive as they played and as well as they held their own against Boston, it lets you take a step back and kind of re-examine things. All right, what worked for us here? What didn't work for us there? What can we bring with us into Carolina? What should we leave in Boston and work on? As they're trying to get their act together. And that's really what this is all about at this point. The Lightning are going to be in the playoffs. They are going to play Toronto. And really at the end of the day, it's just getting back to winning ways, losing their last four in and going 4-5-1 in their last 10. And you look at what Carolina's done, and I really don't want to. I always hate having this conversation with teams, opposing teams, um, because you got to look at who they played, how that team was also playing that they played against. So they might be struggling. Some of the teams that they beat, they might be struggling. But you look at Carolina's last 10, very impressive off the glance. Boston in their last game, 4-3 loss in overtime, winning against Toronto 5-3, beating the Rangers 3-2, and beating, I guess, Philly. But there were some games here that they lost to very good teams, rightfully so. They lost 4-0 to Vegas. They lost 3-0 to New Jersey. I guess by by that, with the Lightning playing some of those teams as well as recently in their last 10, you kind of look at those matchups and say, well, by definition, or just because the Lightning beat the Devils twice in a row and Carolina got shut out by New Jersey, they should, in theory, be able to compete with this team. As well as you look at Boston, Lightning losing 2-1. Carolina lost 4-3 in overtime. In theory, the Lightning should win, or at least have a chance, like they did in Boston, should have a chance in Carolina against the Hurricanes. But the Lightning have struggled. And we can't look past that against the Hurricanes this year. Losing 4-3 at home back in November, and most recently in the beginning of this month, losing 6-0. So really, what do the Lightning need to do? And I stated, Carolina has so many weapons that could hurt you. But at the end of the day, really what it comes down to is really the Lightning can't worry about all these players on the other team that could beat you. They can't worry about Sebastian Aho. They can't worry about Martin Nishas. They can't worry about Jesper Foss or Seth Jarvis or Andre Kasha or Martin Hook. The list goes on. They can't worry about all of that. All they have to worry about is themselves. All they have to worry about is going out there and scoring on either Fredrik Andersen or Antti Ranta, two goaltenders who I firmly believe they could score on. Not only score on, but go out there and really score multiple goals and really be successful against. But at the end of the day, as was the story for Boston, really what it comes down to is that the only person or the only team that is going to hold this Lightning team back from being successful is themselves. Because we've seen throughout certain instances this year, win or lose, the Lightning have success. It's all about consistency, which we have not seen. And that is the most important thing. And that's the key phrase that I will reiterate every single game, the Lightning approach. And because you look at it, this team, even though that they have immensely struggled in their last 10, have lost 4 in a row, have had, for the most part, pretty much close games. A close game against Boston, a good performance against Jersey twice, a good performance and a loss against Winnipeg, and a good performance against the Vegas Golden Knights. All teams that are going to the playoffs. And so I really expect the Lightning to go out there and play, or really this is more wishful thinking, hope that the Lightning go out there and play a crisp, very physical style of hockey, because your guys like your Nikita Kucherovs, like your Braden Points, like your Brandon Hagels, are going to go out there and be your guys. And yes, you may have noticed I left out Steven Stamkos because, as we all know, Stamkos still has some left in the tank to score. He hasn't been that consistent. Can we really count him as the main guy anymore in this Lightning team? I don't believe so. I think he's a good supporting cast player at this moment. Maybe he turns it on the last couple of weeks of the season. Maybe he turns it on once playoff time comes, but you need to see it in order to put him back in that category. I think that right now, when we look at this Lightning team, they have three main players that are going to go out there and help you on a nightly basis. And those are the ones I mentioned: Kucherov, Point, and Hagel. But in order for this team to win tomorrow night and not beat themselves, it needs to be a group effort. They need to look at Boston. They need to look at how Carolina plays, because they are this kind of team. It's just about putting it on the ice and producing. They are that kind of team, and they could be that team. And we've seen them be that team as recent as last year in certain points. Be that kind of team that could go out there and hurt you with anybody that they have on the ice. We've seen it. We've seen the nights where Alex Killorn contributes. We've seen it on the same nights where Brandon Hagel goes out there, where Nick Paul goes, where we get a goal from Sergachev or from Nick Pervix. The other night again with Victor Hedman. So they have the tools. They have the necessary talent to do that. It's just a matter of going out there and executing, especially against good teams, as they try to somehow, some way, get it together before the playoffs start. So let me know in the comments section below, what do you think about this game? How you feeling? We'll preview it tomorrow, so keep an eye out for that episode, and we'll be out. There'll be a recap to follow late tomorrow night. That may drop tomorrow night late or early Wednesday morning, so keep an eye out for that. But yeah, this is a game I'm cautiously optimistic about, because, like I said, last meeting, 6-0, completely outclassed by the Canes. Having said that, if Boston came out the other night and absolutely thrashed the Lightning in the way that the Lightning were thrashed against Ottawa, I'd be saying, oh boy, this is going to be a long game. It's just going to be another butt whooping. But I don't think we're going to see that. I think we're starting to see the tide slowly turn. Whether it results in a win or a loss, as long as we see some competitive nature out there, we don't see day one mistakes, I'm willing to stay optimistic. So let me know if you are. So we'll wrap things up in just a little bit. Definitely want to tie a bow on this one, talk about some players real quick who I want to see start to get things going with. We're going to talk about that in just a bit. But first, I want to talk about our last sponsor of the day, and that is our friends at Built Bar. Now, you've probably heard about us talking about Built Bar for years now, talking about how their bars have 130 calories with 4 grams of sugar and a whopping 17 grams of protein. But you might ask yourself, what makes Built Bars so good? Well, for starters, they're covered in 100% real chocolate. That's right, real chocolate. And we've been saying for years how ordering your Built Bars, you could get them from built.com, but now you could get them at your local Walmart or Sam's Club. That's right. Head to your nearest Walmart today. Walk to the pharmacy section and grab yourself a box of Built Bars. You could pick up a 4-bar box of cookies and cream, double chocolate, or coconut puffs. Or if you're close to Sam's Club, run in and grab a 13 box with our hit flavors, brownie batter and churro. You could thank me later. So wrapping things up here on the show, a little bit of, I guess, a new wave of optimism, at least on my end here. Like I said, let me know in the comments below what you think about, how are we feeling about this Lightning team? Yeah, as we last spoke about when they just absolutely got outclassed by Ottawa, I was very critical of this team, I think rightfully so, as well as just I did not think that they were going to play nearly as well against the Boston Bruins. I thought we were going to see pretty much the same effort, same outcome, at least in goals scored. And it is very positive to see them play that close to the game, but they have to continue it. It doesn't mean anything. The positivity doesn't mean anything. And it's definitely not anything you could hang your hat on if, you say, well, we played well against Boston, but we completely didn't show up against Carolina. So we need to see them be consistent alongside with, like I stated previously, this isn't a 3-man effort, 4-man if you want to count Vasilevsky, who, like I said, played very well against Boston. We're starting to see him turn it around to some degree. I still think we have a long ways to go before we could confidently say that he is back to normal. But looking at this team, it's a little distressing going down the line, especially with Boston. Excuse me, with Toronto, just right around the corner in terms of really of having to face them, because it's like I said, it's not going to be a 4-man effort. It's not going to be a 3-man effort. When it comes to scoring with Hagel, Point, and Cooch, it's going to have to take everybody. And the Lightning should take notes from Boston and Carolina, because if Tampa isn't going to go far in the Stanley Cup playoffs out of the East, I would bet money that it would be from Boston. It would be from Carolina, those teams that you could bet your money on to go further, because I firmly believe they have the most depth, something that I do think the Lightning have on paper. They just haven't been showing it on the ice. So really what it comes down to it is that we need to see some of the supporting cast members come out and score and play well, and that's Anthony Cirelli. That's Ross Colton, he's just been having a go of it this year. It's Tanner Jeannot, who I still will give some time because I still think he needs some time to settle in. Nick Paul, who hasn't really been scoring as often as we would like. Corey Perry, who I still think, all things considered, him being 37 years old, I still think that he has a lot of gas left in the tank for someone like that. He plays smart. It's just a matter of executing and being able to finish on those scoring chances. And on the defensive side of things, I would really like to see more, as we all know, out of Victor Hedman. He showed the other night with that goal that he could still score. He has the ability to do so. But we need to see it on both sides of the ice, defensively and scoring. And then Nick Pervix, who got off to a very good start this year, was really one of the big shining spots on this team thus far, one of the bigger surprises. I don't think that was a fluke. I think that he has that ability. He's a smart player. I just think it's all about, for him, setting himself up with opportunities that we saw him be able to give himself early in the season. So I would like to see him start to produce a little bit more offensively down the stretch. And last but not least, on the defensive side of things, is really Mikhail Sergachev. I think he's taken a big step this year. He's gotten himself on the first power play unit, and I really think that I would like to see him score I would like to see at least him shoot 3 to 4 shots per game from the point. I think that he does such a good job of being able to navigate through all that traffic in front of the opposing goaltender to at least either get a goal for himself or at least allow his teammate to get some sort of a deflection or a second chance in front of the net. So really, if those players that I just listed off, if they could come out and execute, I think obviously the other players that I did not mention will follow suit and be able to have things open up for them as long as those players consistently produce offensively as well as defensively. So keep an eye out for that. Keep an eye out for that going forward in tomorrow night's game against Carolina. And that's definitely something that we're going to need to see more of in order for them to really, I guess, polish off or get ready for the Stanley Cup playoffs. So we'll talk more about tomorrow's game against Carolina Hurricanes tomorrow. So keep an eye out that for in the morning. And we'll be back in the nighttime tomorrow night to recap the game. So keep an eye out for that as well. So in the meantime, that's been it for this episode of Locked On Lightning, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Adam Danker. I'll talk to you in the next one.